Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Sam. I am the Health Education Project Specialist at the Maxwell and Eleanor Blum Patient Family Learning Center at Mass General. Before we get started, just want to go over a few items with you all. Please note that today's session is being recorded for educational purposes. If you're interested in viewing the recording, you may visit the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Please note that you are in listen-only mode. Everyone has been muted so you can hear our guest speaker today. If you have any questions for our guest speaker, you may use the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time for it in the end. Only Blum Center staff and our guest speaker will see your questions. Please do not share any personal medical information or questions in the chat. If you have a personal medical question, please ask your doctor. Lastly, at the end of today's session, you'll be directed to a brief survey, which we'd like to ask you to help us complete. Your feedback is important to us as we plan future programs. Okay, so next, I would like to introduce you all to our guest speaker. Joining us today, we have Holley. Catherine is an operating room nurse at Mass General. A graduate of Duke University, she has been a nurse for 42 years in the Boston area. Kathy has lived with secondary lymphedema for 38 years and is very passionate about educating others and spreading awareness about this incurable disease. In recognition of World Lymphedema Day, which was on Monday, she joins us today to give a talk on lymphedema. So please join me in welcoming Kathy.
Thank you so much, Amy. So my name is Kathy Holley. As Amy said, I'm a nurse here at Mass General, and I've been at Mass General now for 22 years. I work in the operating room. Currently, I've been in the operating room about, 18 of those years. I work in general surgery, and within general surgery, I work in the trauma area, general surgery trauma, as well as surgical oncology. And within surgical oncology, that also encompasses breast cancer surgery for breast cancer, lumpectomies, mastectomies, breast reconstructions. So I do work with that population of patients as well as other cancer surgeries. So just that's a little bit of my nursing background. I was also a labor and delivery nurse many, many decades ago, and then have done other things between that and now. So thank you for joining me today. I also want to point out that today is International Women's Day and National Proofreading Day. And I thank everybody who's perhaps watching that helped proofread this PowerPoint presentation for me. So thank you. So a little bit about my lymphedema background. I had elective surgery back in 1979, and that was on my right leg. I had, back in that period of time, I had very bad varicose veins, which I had removed. Other members of my family had them removed and had no problems with that. We don't have very good venous system in my family, so it was not unusual. I was in college. Everything went fine with the surgery. I did great. And roughly, I kind of forget. So I graduated in '81 from college and started my nursing career. About 8 or 9 years later, my foot and ankle started swelling. I was working the night shift and in a busy labor unit. I didn't think much of it. It reduced in the morning after sleeping, and you'll hear through my talk that it is a big issue with lymphedema is the diagnosis and finding the right diagnosis. And that was my problem. Back then, there was no internet. There was no way to really learn, kind of explore by yourself what was going on. I saw vascular surgeons, and over the course of several years, people started to think that perhaps it was lymphedema. My very first appointment to seek care with an actual person who knew what to do and help me was a certified lymphedema therapist, and that wasn't until just 13 years ago. So at that point, I was stage 2. My leg was all fibrosis, and I had intense therapy, which I'll go over with you later on. I did more intense therapy treatment with certified lymphedema therapist 3 years later. Neither of those worked for me. And then I became quite an advocate later, several years later, and started a Massachusetts support network, a chapter of a national organization. So that's just a little bit about me. So I just want to start off with more people suffer from lymphedema and lymphatic diseases in the United States than suffer from AIDS, ALS, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, and Parkinson's combined. So they estimate 3 to 5 million people within the United States here have lymphatic diseases, lymphedema. Worldwide, it's in the hundreds of millions. Worldwide, it has to do with availability of antibiotics. It's caused more on a global scale. It's caused by a parasite, and often caused by a parasite called filariasis. I'm not getting into that today, but it's a pretty daunting, compelling statistic there when you look at that. So I'm going to just do a very quick review for people about the circulatory system. So there's two components to the circulatory system. There's the arteries and veins that we're obviously very familiar with, or most of us understand. And then there's the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system interweaves throughout our entire body. There's several components to it, which I'll go over. And it shares a space at the capillary level. Down here in the interstitial tissue, down to the capillaries, fluid comes out from the veins and goes into the tissues. The lymphatic vessels pick up that tissue and start transporting it through the lymphatic vessels. So this is the lymphatic system, actually. It comprises of the tonsils, which are a whole group of lymph nodes, the thymus, the spleen, bone marrow, and these lymph nodes, lymphatic vessels, and the lymph fluid. So today, I'm going to mostly be talking, I'm always today going to be talking about just this part of it, okay? So the basics of this are, it's a network of tissues and organs. I think of it as the body's pool vacuum, which is this picture I found online. It's picking up the extra tissue, the extra fluids, toxins, bacteria that's in the tissue. It's moving it through our body. It's part of our immune system, and it is not. It has no pump of its own, so there's no heart muscle pumping it like the circulatory system. It's using muscle, like our skeletal muscle, to help push the flow of lymph, as well as there's smooth muscle within the lymph vessels that are moving it, okay? So it's got a lot of work to do on its own to move the lymph fluid through the lymph vessels. There's over 3 liters of lymph fluid in our body, and believe it or not, there's over 600 lymph nodes, which is amazing, really, when you think about it. So really, what is lymph fluid? This is a pretty unusual picture. It's hard to find a picture of a collection of lymph fluid, actually. So it's made up mostly of water, but it's whatever it's gathering in the interstitial tissue, okay? The most significant 2 things here is protein and bacteria. And as I'll talk about, in the failure of our lymph system, the vessels and the collection of lymph fluid, it is collecting of this protein and bacteria that is the biggest issue, because it's stagnant in our body, okay, and can be a real medium for infection. So this, I felt, was a pretty compelling statement from the National Cancer Institute back in 2015. Lymphedema is one of the most poorly understood, relatively underestimated, and least researched complication of cancer or its treatment. Here, it's, again, one of the biggest issues throughout all the diagnosis and being coming down with lymphedema and experiencing it in my experience, in so many other people, is just the understanding in the medical community of diagnosing it, and then once you're diagnosed, where do we send you as clinicians? Okay, so for those of you watching that may not be familiar with it very well, I'm just going to briefly go over it. So lymphedema is the swelling or edema that occurs because there's injury to the tissue, lymphatic tissue or vessels, or perhaps there are people that are born with a congenital impairment of the lymphatic system. It's chronic. It's progressive. It can get worse if it's not managed right, and it's not curable. Although the onset, so if, which I'll explain in a minute, if there's an injury to your lymphatics, you might have immediate response and develop a problem, or it could occur 1 to 2 years later, or even decades later. And the number one risk here in the United States, the highest incidence of lymphedema here in the United States, is breast cancer surgery associated with axillary lymph node dissection. Okay, that has that incidence has decreased because of the advent of you doing sentinel node biopsy, which has greatly reduced the incidence of lymphedema with breast cancer. So this is an example of, let me just try, I think, hopefully you're not hearing all that. Okay, so this is an example of stages in the upper extremity. So in the far left here, you see stage 0, which means you are stage 0. You've had injury, something has occurred, you've had surgery, there's something that puts you at risk for lymphedema. You don't have lymphedema, but you're at risk. So that the arms you're seeing in stage 0, they're perfectly fine. There's no difference, okay? There's no tightness, there's no fullness. That woman just is at risk, she's stage 0. In the next picture, stage 1, she has minimal edema, it's a little fullness, there's tightness, perhaps she's feeling her sleeve is a little bit tighter, her rings might not be fitting. The edema reduces at night while she's sleeping. She may have something called pitting edema, which is you can push, if she's got some fullness, you can push on it and you might see the imprint of your finger. But then that fullness, the imprint disappears. So that's called pitting edema. That's the time you want to intervene, you want to get diagnosed, and you want to seek treatment immediately, because you can prevent the progression if you're getting the right treatment. Stage 2 is the third one there. I'm at stage 2. I'm at kind of advanced stage 2. I never got treatment. This one you can see is a much fuller arm. You'd have to have more aggressive treatment. And stage 3 is a much more distorted arm, would need something much more aggressive treatment, or treatment may not work. And it would have to be just helping to maintain and secure that arm and wearing compression, but probably massage and other modalities wouldn't work for that person. So the 2 types of lymphedema are primary. You can be born with it. There are over 40 rare disorders that are associated with that. One is Milroy's, that's congenital, that's identified at birth. And then there's one that comes at adolescence called TARDA, lymphedema precox, excuse me. And then TARDA is more when you're an adult, say in your 30s, comes out of nowhere. You may have no idea that you were at risk and that you had primary lymphedema. The second one is the second type is secondary, what we call secondary. That's what I have. Close to 70% of the cases of secondary are cancer-related, from cancer-related surgeries. It's damage to anything, for any reason, what's damaged the lymph system. It could be any type of surgery, radiation damage is damaging to tissue. Someone who's experienced burns or trauma, for any, someone who's had a biking accident or a car accident, or simply I've actually met people who had a bad spider bite and got an infection. And over the course of time, something triggered and they developed lymphedema from that. So infection can trigger damage to the lymphatics. So right now, I'm going to be focusing more on the secondary aspects of lymphedema. So just to give you a very brief overview of lymph nodes, for those of you who aren't that familiar with them, they are throughout your whole body. There are close to over 300 lymph nodes, I believe, in your head and neck, which people I don't think realize. But these are the kind of the major clusters of where lymph nodes are. So you can see if you're having surgery in that area, in these areas here, you might be disturbing some lymph nodes, or lymph nodes may be removed because of the type of surgery you're having. So this is a slide I put together from reading an article back. It was a large study done back in 2010. It was a review of multiple studies. It was a meta-analysis of multiple studies on secondary lymphedema that were cancer-related. And so the data is from 2010, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. From this study, the overall occurrence of cancer-related, incidence of cancer-related was 15%, but you can see I broke it down for you here. I do want to point out that where it says breast with radiation, it says in this review was 49%. My understanding from that is that was radiation that was specific to the lymph node area, not so much radiation to the breast or the chest wall itself. So that was that 49 high incidence was more where the radiation was to the lymph node area. The most recent, there was a large study done in 2013, and I do have the references at the back of my presentation, and that showed with breast cancer without node radiation, it's more like a 20% incidence. Okay, so you have lymphedema, okay, and what are the treatment options? So stage 1 is optimal is early and accurate diagnosis. I cannot stress that enough. I have to say, because of my situation, which was unique for me back then, all of my experience with lymphedema has been me finding my own care. And, I'm a nurse and figured it out over time. I had a lot of time to figure it out. But most patients, I don't think, are clinicians. So it's really hard if you don't know how to find the resources and figure it out yourself. So I'm going to go over how to help people that share this disease. Anyway, early diagnosis, finding a certified lymphedema therapist. Certified lymphedema therapists are specially trained physical therapists, occupational therapists, massage therapists who have taken special certification, very intense training. I actually have my certification that I got about 5 years ago. I wanted to be certified as a lymphedema therapist. I don't practice as one, but it was important for me to understand the background and how to do it. There are a lot of avenues online how to find one, and I'm happy to help people navigate that afterwards. And there, I can show you, I can explain how to do that in the references. Anyway, it comprises of learning with your certified lymphedema therapist, your CLT, how to do soft touch lymphatic massage, getting compression garments. Patient education is huge, and you want to prevent fluid from progressing. Okay. Stage 2 is more when the limb is full, you haven't kind of stopped it from progressing, and it's a fuller limb. You're doing much more intense therapy. I did this stage 2, it's called CDT. I did that twice. It's a month-long commitment. And ideally, for optimal results, you're doing Monday through Friday, and it's for 4 weeks. You are wrapped and bandaged. You go for 2 hours a day to your physical therapist, and it's a 2-hour session. You're getting massaged and then wrapped, and you're measured, and they measure to see how much fluid you're losing each week, and the results can be absolutely remarkable. Mine weren't, but that's a whole nother story. But that's because I hadn't received care. And the goal is to reduce the volume of your affected area. Oh, my cat is here. I'm so sorry. Reduce the volume of the affected area to optimize moving forward and keeping your limb at the right reduced area. The third area of treatment options is surgery. Okay. There's been huge advancements in surgery options in the last couple of decades. We are so fortunate to have some wonderful centers of excellence across the country that have specially trained. They're plastic surgeons and reconstructive surgeons that are trained in microsurgery and lymphatic surgery. So there is, the first one is essentially, it's called SAPL, but it is, it's liposuction of the limb. That's for people like myself who have a limb that my lymph has been stagnant for so long. It's become solidified kind of fat. So it doesn't move. I don't drain. And so they're going to do liposuction. They would do liposuction to suck out the fat and recontour my leg to match my other leg. There's lymph node transfer. That is moving from a healthy part of your body, moving like from your abdomen or your neck or some other area that's not affected, taking a healthy node and reimplanting it into your arm or your leg or wherever you're affected, because you can have lymphedema anywhere. I'm talking about arm and legs, but it can occur anywhere. And then what happens is over time, it takes a while, but new lymph channels would start to grow from that lymph node. Okay. The other option is a lymphovenous bypass, and that is a wonderful skill the surgeons have. Procedure. They reroute that's very microscopic lymph vessels and reroute them to small microscopic veins, kind of channel them into veins, and that improves kind of bypassing, so it's a bypass, and reroutes them to vein flow, so they create new lymphatic flow. And actually that surgery can be done, they are offering that to the correct, in the right situation, they offer that simultaneously, sometimes when they're doing lymph node dissections. In the right environment, a lymphatic surgeon can at the same time do surgery with the breast surgeons to do surgery at that time. So that is being offered at certain places around the country. Centers of Excellence. This is a website here. Learn is a Lymphatic Education and Research Network, and I'll talk about them in a little bit, but this is a site where you can look and see where there are wonderful lymphatic centers, lymphedema centers throughout the country that have been recognized for their work. So I circle this here up top because sharing, this might be too much information, but I'm actually, after years of contemplation, I am scheduled to have this liposuction surgery myself in 2 weeks here in Boston. So I'm at one of the centers of excellence. So I'm very excited. And I can't quite imagine what life will be like once this happens. So anyway, so just getting back to the treatment, this is an example of someone with head and neck lymphedema. They had some type of resection. I don't know the background, but this is the results after intense 8 months of treatment. So you can see the starting point. It's really quite remarkable to see where he ends up back to, I'm assuming, his normal state at 8 months. But this is through a commitment. It takes patient commitment, diligence, you have to be vigilant and work with, you have to have a great relationship with your physical therapist, certified lymphedema therapist. I mean, you have to, and your family, your support system. It's a lot of work, but you can see the results. So just daily maintenance. I just put these in here as an example of things that are part of our lives. Up in the, what is that? The left-hand corner, this is just a diagram of someone, some options, an option for some people. It's used, it's not for everybody, but there are pneumatic pumps that may be part of a treatment plan for someone, and you put them on, and they are fit for your limb or your part of your body, and they are sequential pumping system is meant to pump fluid out of your limb. So I'm not going to get into that more, but this is an option for people, and you would work with your CLT or physician if that's the right care for you. Swimming is an excellent exercise for lymphedema, lymphatic problems, because of the pressure when you're swimming, the pressure from the water against your body. For us, my understanding is that for me, it's the only time I don't wear compression. I'm in compression 24/7. It's the only time I believe we can take our kind of cheat and take our compression off is when we're swimming, because we're getting the results of the pressure against from the water. And up top here in the middle is just a still shot here of somebody performing this soft tissue manual lymph drainage, and it's a very specific type of drainage. It's not, if you go to a massage parlor, sorry, if you go for a massage somewhere, it's not a deep tissue massage. You know, it's not a Swedish massage, that kind of thing. It's a very different type of thing. the person down, this woman down here, she's wearing a custom or a type of compression garment for a head and neck. Okay, so these are just examples. This down here, actually in the right corner pocket here, that's actually my leg when I was going through that intense therapy. That's what I wore 24/7 for a month. I would shower at the clinic where I went. That was in New York, actually. And then exercise, again, skeletal muscle, moves lymph, helps push the lymph vessels, so it helps the flow of lymph, encourages it, let's say. And then you see the woman who's wearing a garment. We call them garments. So again, these are just visuals for things that make up our day, and it is time consuming. It is very time consuming. For lymphedema in the community, excuse me, in our community, we call it our lymphedema toolbox. And there are several social media groups, and you'll see postings, what's in your toolbox. So I'll use that here. So what's in my toolbox? I will tell you my number one thing is up here in the left-hand corner, Jobst It Stays. There are many brands. It is, I cannot live without this. So it is a roll-on adhesive. It's like a detergent roll-on, but it's an adhesive, because garments for some people don't always stay snug and tight up, whether it's up here, because you tend to have a silicone band on your garment. For my leg, I have a thigh high, and I have to, so you put it in, it's washable, it comes right off, but you would put it, if this is my leg, I put it up here on the top of my thigh, and I would pull my garment up and put the silicone band here. It does not budge all day long. Otherwise, I would be pulling it up and pulling it up. It's sagging during the day and things like that. Some people don't need it, but there are many of us that swear by this product. And again, it's made by several different vendors, but I buy it online. That's where I get 3 bottles for $20-something. There are, this is something that I use a lot, moleskin, for areas of your feet that might get pressure points, skin sensitivity. It's something that I need to use because of bony prominences on my feet. So I just put that there. These are my things. And then rubber gloves to help pull up your garments. You need a certain type of chemical-free detergent. You need to wash your we all have bandages we have to wrap our legs in. You have to use a lingerie bag to protect them, and they're always air dried. Once you air dry these long bandages, then you have to wrap them. I have over 30 bandages I have to wrap, and this wrap wrench is a lifesaver. So you just put it in here and you make all these rolls. I'm telling you, it's fantastic. So these are some other people's suggestions online that reached out to me about what they use. A lot of patients, I'm a nurse, I'm sorry, people have had success with kinesio tape, and using that to help in different areas of their limb or their body, of helping to help the movement of lymph flow. And you would talk to your lymphedema therapist about how to position that. I know that a lot of people have had that. So dry brushing, all of this you can kind of research online. A rebounder for people with lower extremity, to use a rebounder for exercise and to help flex your calf. Antibiotic ointment for infection because of our risk of infection. Quickly, I'm just going to talk about lipedema and what that is in case anybody is interested in understand. Well, I'm interested in letting you know the difference. It's a painful fat disorder. It is primarily in women. It is progressive and it is painful, okay? There is an estimated 11% of the women worldwide have this disorder. It is resistant to diet and or exercise. It's a very difficult disorder to have because people don't understand, physicians don't understand, you know, it's not understood. And it's very emotionally, very, very difficult. There is a wonderful, here's a wonderful site, reference site online. This is the difference between lymphedema and lipedema. You can see this is fluid filled. This is fat, okay? It's a whole different shaped leg. I mean, this is a very bad looking leg I'm showing you with lymphedema, but just for dramatic sense. And the difference is at the ankle here. The fat doesn't extend down to the foot, whereas in this limb, the foot is full with fluid, okay? Cellulitis, again, is an issue with lymphedema because we're at risk for infection. We've got all this protein and bacteria in our lymph fluid that's just kind of hanging out. So cellulitis is a real concern for us. I've been very fortunate. I've had cellulitis once and was needed to be hospitalized. It was many years ago, but a very close friend and colleague here in Boston has been hospitalized. I think in 1 year she was hospitalized 6 times. I've heard other people 12 times in 1 year because it gets worse each time. It's fast. The onset can be fast. You know, you wake up in the morning with feeling fine, and by 6 o'clock, it's spread. The redness has extended, and you really need to seek help rapidly. It's a serious condition. This picture over here is just showing, it's very hard to see, but it's showing kind of lymph fluid weeping out of your skin. And that's a bad medium for collection of bacteria and skin breakdown. All right. So reality of a lymphedema life, in addition to what we're living with, and again, you just may be at risk for your life, or you may have a limb that's in very good control. And that is certainly possible and real. But you do have a threat of infection. Some people have a lot of pain and immobility. I do not. I am really fortunate. Clothing and shoes, finding a top, finding something that fits your sleeve, the self-image, self-esteem issues, body image in a relationship. It's emotionally, psychologically, it's difficult. There is a financial burden, particularly because of the cost of some of these services are not covered, and it's a daily time commitment. So this is just an example of a shoe issue. So this is the patient that I just showed you earlier. He had custom shoes made that were extremely expensive, but there was a community resource that helped fund this for him. So this was his foot. To give you a point of reference, this is my foot right next to him, and I'm in an 11 wide. So that just shows you, how drastic his issue was. So available resources and support networks. There, when I started looking into things, maybe 8-9 years ago, from there to now, it has grown exponentially. And that's because the word is getting out and the community of us is building. And I can't tell you how fantastic that is. So these, I won't go into all of these, but these are a list of, these first two are nonprofits. I've been personally affiliated with the Lymphedema Education Network, a research network, for several years. I started a chapter. They have state chapters, support network chapters throughout the country. And I started the one here in Massachusetts back in 2017. So I gave some links to their different parts of their website. They have an incredible symposium series that they have expert content, world-renowned speakers from lymphedema communities, and it's all accessed free on their website. Please utilize the resources there. National Lymphedema Network also is a wonderful nonprofit. They have great educational opportunities for clinicians as well as patients. And then there is enormous amount of support online for us through social media. There's private groups, public groups. Just type in your social media platform lymphedema and things will pop up. There's a lot of private opportunities there to share and talk and find out things, as well as websites themselves. So I share some of that there with you. These are really wonderful. These actually now can be found on the Learn network, the Learn website, but these were written by patients, a community of patients that got together. Learn has now taken them over, but excuse me, these are great educational things. I just put them up here for people to see. 10 things I need to know about lymphedema, 10 things my doctor needs to know, my family needs to know. There's a whole list of them. So there's great resources out there. Since I've been at Mass General, I've been a real advocate, and I had the opportunity a few years ago, with the support of the administration from the OR, I wrote a new lymphedema education material, new education materials. It's been approved by Mass General. It's been approved by, Learn, and it's on their website. It's available on their website. So one thing that's exciting is the Lymphedema Treatment Act. I'm just going to mention it briefly. Medicare does not cover the cost of our compression garments, which we need to change, to update and get new ones every 6 months, because the compression does not, it relaxes and it's not productive or doesn't work well. So we're, they've worked for 13 years on Capitol Hill and it just got passed. That is a major, major improvement. Lymphatic research. They're looking at the lymphatics throughout the entire body and how they play a role. I won't go into that because we're running out of time. A huge step in lymphatics is the discovery that there are lymphatics in the brain, in the central nervous system, and that was discovered in 2015. They never knew that before, and it has implications throughout our body, and particularly with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and dementia, everything. Okay, so wrapping it up, there's a lot of exciting things. And the Treatment Act, there is enormous amount of funding that was just approved from the NIH and the Department of Defense. I think it's somewhere near like 300 million or something. It's an enormous amount of money. Oh no, it's not for lymphedema. Excuse me, I completely made a mistake there. But there's a a large source of money for research. And they have just now this year included lymphedema and lymphatic diseases. There's a lot of advance, and actually MGH is just now this year starting a lymphedema center, which I am very excited about, and I was very happy to share that. So I think we're pretty much ready for some questions. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you so
There's
much.
a list of resources here, and March is Lymphedema Awareness Month. So thank you, and I hope you have a swell day.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We do have a question, but just wanted to give an opportunity to introduce Cheryl Brunel, who is joining us from physical therapy. So if you have any therapy-related questions, she's also available to help address any questions.
Great. Thank you, Amy.
So we have a question from an attendee. I'm going to help moderate the questions, if that's okay. We have an attendee with a history of a tumor on their tongue. As a result, had a number of lymph nodes removed from their neck plus radiation treatment. This has caused neck swelling that has been giving this person issues. They can eat and speak, but feels uncomfortable and is unable to swallow comfortably. This person is seeing a speech swallow therapist as well as a physical therapist, has been shown how to do lymph massages at home, but doesn't see or feel any improvement. Kinesio tape doesn't seem to work well on their skin, and a head neck compression is being delivered to their home. Do you have any suggestions, other suggestions you may have on minimizing the swelling?
Cheryl, I'm going to have you answer that.
Sure. Hi, my name's Cheryl Brunel. I'm from physical therapy here at MGH, and I'm the co-director of the Lymphedema research program here at MGH with Alphonse Tegan from radiation oncology. So it's nice to be here. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was a really informative presentation. Thank you for sharing your perspective, which is so unique. So I would say for this patient, head and neck swelling typically responds fairly well to treatment by a certified lymphedema therapist. Oftentimes when it doesn't, it's because of the scarring or the fibrosis more than anything else. Because of gravity, the head typically drains quite well when we're doing manual lymphatic drainage. Doing a lot of the right things, working with the speech therapist, I think is really important. I would say that compression should make a big difference. And if the first garment is not making a big difference, keep looking for the right garment. And I think Kathy spoke to that well, that you really need the right garment, the right compression. And because of the shape of each person's head, it's so individual. Sometimes it's a bit of trial and error. The other thing I would add is just making sure that the lymphedema therapist you're seeing also has a head and neck certification, because with that comes some different treatment options and additional things they could try for you.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate that.
We have another question. This is for Kathy. What is the most important thing you wish you knew about lymphedema when you first got diagnosed with it?
Wow. Well, the number one thing is I wish I knew that I could go to somebody for treatment. Like I said, I figured out what I had before anybody told me what I had. And, but I didn't know that I should go to a lymphedema therapist. And I was a nurse in Boston. I worked at Brigham and Women's, and then I worked at Mass General. And I also worked in private practice, but I mean, I was in the business, you know, and I never knew that. I was wearing off the shelf compression, but I didn't know that I needed to go for all of this other stuff. So that's the number one thing, because that's what really was my downfall.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. You had talked a little bit about Medicare covering supplies. Do you mind summarizing that again?
Sure. I'll answer it, and then Cheryl, you might have some more input from a different perspective. So here's an example. This is my personal experience. I have had an excellent insurance for the majority of, for all of my working life. And my copay for, I have custom garments, custom compression garments that I replace every 6 months. I have to wash them every night because they lose their compression capacity, their effectiveness. I replace them every 6 months. My copay for that was, I don't know, less than $100, you know, like $30 or something. I've changed insurance. My business has changed. Well, Mass General has changed insurance, and now that is no longer covered. So now that's all out of pocket, and they're hundreds of dollars. And Medicare has never covered compression, to my understanding. Cheryl, is that correct? Yeah. So this Lymphedema Treatment Act is a way, by getting it approved, by now having it as a federal bill, Medicare starting next January 1st is going to have to start covering these medically prescribed compression. And my understanding is that once Medicare has to pay for it, all subsequent insuring companies will follow suit. Is that true, Cheryl?
Yes, usually once Medicare can start coding for something and covering it, we will see the private insurers start to cover. And I will add that your policy is not the only one. In the last year or two, I have found the coverage has been worsening by the month almost.
Is that right?
And they are just so expensive and need frequent replacing. As you said, a night garment could be $1,200.
Yeah.
A lot of money that patients are spending every year. So it will be very nice to see. And the work that's being done right now is to help create the language with Medicare that will ensure that people are not falling through loopholes for coverage.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's and because I can't, because it's out of pocket, and I know this for many other people, is you delay getting your new garments. So I've been wearing garments that are like 2 years old because it's $500-600 for me to buy my garment every 6 months. And I'm mad at my insurance company. I mean, I get angry. So it's like I get mad and I'm cheap, and so I wear old garments, and that's not good for my lymphedema, you know. So
thank you so much. So I think we're at time. In short, we do have one question, if you don't mind briefly addressing that. Do you foresee in the future them including education about lymphedema as part of the medical students' curriculum?
It's my understanding that in the past there's been roughly about 20 to 30 minutes in the curriculum for a medical school is devoted to the lymphatic system. I would have to say that anybody who's watched the talk today, you probably have more knowledge than most of the medical students that come out of medical school about lymphedema. But Cheryl, what's your understanding about curriculums?
This is changing as physicians know more about lymphedema, and there are recommendations to screen for lymphedema after cancer treatment. Oncologists are certainly understanding it better. They are starting to incorporate lymphatic curriculum into medical school and allied health professions. I was just lecturing to the Boston University first year PTs last week, which was a pleasure to see that they are putting that into the curriculum. So it's coming, which will be a welcome change for those people at risk over the next several decades.
Right, right. Well, as I mentioned earlier, it is because of clinicians like Cheryl and her team in physical therapy they are our lifesavers. I mean, if it wasn't for their expertise and commitment to our disease and making us healthier, I don't know what we would do, really. So thank you.
Well,
And
thank you.
thank you, Amy, for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Of course, thank you so much. And everyone who took the time to join us today, thank you so much for attending. Hopefully you found the session helpful. As I had mentioned, today's session is being recorded. If you're interested in viewing the recording, you may visit the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Great. Bye-bye, everybody.